firstly,
good morning to everyone.
I should say that also. And thank you so much for coming, Marcin, when I know that you were playing last night and I've seen your touring schedule, and if I was you, I'd have liked to sleep till lunchtime today. But, so we're very, very, very pleased that you could come. I thought I'd start by asking you a little bit about, your early life in music. I've read that you started training as a classical musician, and then at the age of 13 already, you became interested in jazz. And for me, that's quite an early age to become interested in jazz. It's usually later for many people, I think.
I hope my story is not boring. Thank you. Talking about my beginning, interesting in jazz. It's actually, I started listening a little earlier. I was 7, 8, 9 years old when I was fighting with my cousin to listen Walkman, some music. And it was my uncle's music on tapes, and there were Kid Jarrett recordings, music of Kenny Kirkland, Jack DeJohnette, and Wynton Marsalis, the Brown Marsalis, and some other jazz from 60s from Miles and John Coltrane, Wynton Kelly. So I was listening from the beginning this great American jazz music, which I like, and I'm lucky also. From the beginning, the jazz music for me was clear, like I hear that someone doesn't like jazz, so they are not able to love this music at all. So because I know from my perspective that it can be a pure pleasure to listen for the first time jazz music, like I was listening. I was 7 years old.
Yeah, I mean, certainly from my own experience, I remember listening to jazz when I was 7 years old, and it just sounded like noise to me.
It was just
I had to wait until I was a little more mature.
Like a soft pillow.
A soft pillow, lovely. And so from that early introduction to jazz through cassette tapes, did you take formal training in jazz, or?
No, I was I started from the beginning, from the school, ground school, from really beginning, like playing on the piano, basic stuff, basic melodies, classical training. The music was more and more on higher level, but from the beginning I was into the rhythmic music because my father had a lot of tapes, recordings. He is a professional musician, playing to entertain people, and so I had an opportunity to listen to Herbie Hancock, Oscar Peterson, and a good pop music from Western part. So I'm not, my tradition is not folk music. There was not much folk music in Poland, on north of Poland. So there is a folk music on south of Poland, but I was not living there. But it's quite important folk music from in other countries, but not mine. I was playing music from Beethoven, Chopin, Bach, Mozart, also then later on Brahms, some other contemporary composers, but at that time, around 12, 13 age, I really was focused on rhythmic music from America, on jazz.
And did you find that, when you're making that transition, or maybe it's not a transition, maybe you're doing both, you're doing the classical thing and the rhythmic music, can you talk a little bit maybe about the frictions between those disciplines and performance norms, or the synergies, how they interact, or do you see them as separate?
No, it's from you have to study classical music, the basic stuff, how to push the key, how to have a good apparatus, a good body to make music out from the instrument. So I had a good teachers, and I really appreciate them, and also admire that I was forced to play all this hard sometimes music from 18th centuries, 19th century. Because, for example, Beethoven Sonata, especially second part, I really love to play this, some beautiful compositions of Beethoven. It helped me to focus on sound, which is very important to play, for example, ballad in jazz.
And I mean that idea of sound I find very interesting, because the piano is, on the face of it, a very mechanical instrument, but yet you can, just in the same way that you can identify miles from a single note, you can also identify piano players from a single note, and I've always found that fascinating. And you were talking about posture and apparat, did you call it? Yeah, or technical setup. Is the way you approach different kinds of music, do you change your apparat, or is it all just music?
It's all just music. It's the music. It's in your head. All the technical issue is very important to make the sound. You are right. The horn instruments are more personal, but it's what I like in keyboard and piano instrument. That there's one key, one instrument, and a lot of great piano players all over the world, and you can hear the difference between them. So it's all about you inside.
I noticed that the first album you made it wasn't a tribute to Commodore, it was an exploration of Commodore's music. Christoph Commodore.
It was our debut natural way, because we were taking part in jazz workshop in Poland. 2 weeks in some place in Poland. A lot of older generation musicians were there, and it was fascinating and a big shortcut in how to play jazz music. And there was an old saxophone player, Haftor Medbøe, who gave us Comeda's scores. It was like, oh, I had a band already with my fellow from the school on bassist, and then we met Michał Miśkiewicz, the drummer, whose father is a really great alto saxophone jazz player. And we had already band and material of Krzysztof Komeda, who was a legend in Poland, living in the 60s, 70s. He died accidentally in States while he just started a worldwide career as a music film composer. He was working with Roman Polanski in the 60s. He did a lot of great music, for example, Knife in the Water, beautiful movie. You have to watch this. And the music it's just amazing, playing together with some Swedish musicians. And then he moved to LA, and then he had an accident. He fell down with a writer. So actually, he committed suicide after this, because he was a part of this tragic story. He finished very sadly his living his life, but he did a lot of great compositions. He already was dead 2 years before, so 2 years ago, compared to my age, sorry. And he did fantastic music, and we decided to record his music, because it's just inspiring a ready material of jazz to play.
And I think the thing that strikes me about Commodore's music is that, for me, it's one of the first kind of examples of something that doesn't sound American anymore. Would you agree with that?
Yes, but he was inspired by American jazz, like everybody, I guess, in Europe everybody were excited about playing jazz, about using this form in music, the rhythm and openness and improvising So Komeda was a complex guy who could improvise, who was a great composer in finding melody, sometimes simple melody, I know, catchy, it's not a good word, but he was like a Mozart, so he inspired me to follow your ideas in thinking just a simple melodies, and then you put together all the simple melodies as together to put it together and have a good composition. So he inspired me to do this, to compose.
I think that's an interesting point that you compare him almost to Mozart, because that there is something quite sort of classical feeling in his music for me. But you know, maybe I'm getting too hung up on genres also, because I always do. That album brought you to the attention of Tomasz Stanko, is that correct? And then led to you forming a quartet around Tomasz.
Yes. Then we met Tomasz Stanko, who played with Krzysztof Komeda, and we were so excited to play with him. He's 30 years older than me. Actually, he asked father's drummer, Mikal, he's 2 years younger than me. He was 15, almost 16, to have a permission to play with this Stanko, who was sometimes a crazy avant-garde trumpet player. If he can go for a tour with him, so he said, okay, you are ready, you can go. And then we went with him. I was 18 years old, also bassist, and we already started to play with great Tomasz Stanko, who played with Krzysztof Komeda. And then the story began. It took 15 years. We've been working with him.
Because I wanted to ask a little bit about, you know, that you started in a local scene, I guess, and then it becomes a national. You start touring nationally in Poland, and through Stanko, was that kind of a passport to moving into a more international scene, or?
Yes, of course, it was a big shortcut for us in our first steps into the jazz. It was the best university, much better than the real university we've been studying in Katowice, because we were playing with great musician who is open-minded in music. We could practice immediately on the stage with him, playing on important festivals. Right away, the open music, okay, what we play, just play. No explanation, just it's free. And his attitude is so serious and so artistic. He could only stay on the stage, and it helps you to make your best solo or whatever, to play together as a band. So the old generation musicians were really open for us, like some others musicians, like Tomasz Szukalski, a tenor saxophone player, like Tomasz Stanko, who invites us to play with him. And we feel this background to all the tradition. And there is one story, because Stanko, Komeda gave Stanko some jacket, a jacket. He took his jacket, and some years later, Stanko gave me a coat. So here's my
Do you still have it?
Yeah, I still have it.
And so, following on from your work with Stanko, you've done 3 albums for ECM now, and the last one is with Joachim Milder. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about your introduction to ECM, and how you formed a relationship with I guess, Manfred Eicher also.
Yeah, we've been playing with Stanko from 1995 to 2000, and in these years we've been not ready, I think so, to record for ECM label. I was dreaming with my fellows to record, of course, for ECM, because we were growing up listening a lot of ECM records, ECM artists. Soon in Frankfurt, Manfred heard us as a quartet and mentioned Stanko to make his recording with us. So Stanko invited us to make a recording with him in Oslo. So we've been like, oh my gosh, the dream comes true. So we took a ferry to Istad, and we took a car because we wanted to have our drum set and our bass. And it turned out that the same drum set was there already, used by Jon Christensen and a lot of great musicians who came there, like Jack DeJohnette, or many recordings with Charles Lloyd at that time, in the 90s and beginning of 2000. So we were really excited to do this and focus on do it well, because you have one chance. If Manfred didn't like, so next recording would be never happen again. So we did well, and from the beginning there were a good atmosphere in relationship at work, a specific work, which is 2 days of recording, making music in the studio. It's really thrilling, like the tape is rolling. Sometimes Manfred is saying yes from the window. The tape is burning. But his attitude in building atmosphere in the studio is really, really authentic, and he's like a part, like another member of the band from the glass, behind the glass. So I like he's building this atmosphere. Personally, it helps me to create more serious and natural music in this special moment. 2 days of hard working, but and from the beginning was optimistic, and he at that time in the first recording session he invited us for a second, and it was third, fourth, and fifth, and we still are in ECM.
Because I mean, there's legendary stories about the difficulties of working with IHER. So
yeah, there was one drummer who actually the same drum set who throw it away into the wall. He was because we heard that Manfred is sometimes really tough and saying some word about music. There was one drummer who was his limit was till the end. He took all the drum set and hit on the wall. So then they called Jon Christensen, please help us with making Charles Lloyd recording.
The one that I've heard is that Manfred is on the talkback and he says, I have heard this before, try again. It's pretty daunting, I guess. But I think it would be nice to have some audience questions at this point. We could, if Simon could, I'm hoping that the radio mic works now, but who knows. If not, you'll just have to stand up and shout. I don't know where it's.
Hello?
Yep. And it does work. Would anyone like to ask Marcin a difficult question? Or an easy one? Nobody?
Hello. I'm curious, you mentioned that for each of us with our instruments, there's a certain amount of ourselves that we bring to the instrument that then gives that sound that makes it unique to you. And I wonder if you're aware of anything distinctly that you bring to the instrument that then makes it sound like you, like your sense of humour or something in your education or your upbringing, anything along those lines.
That's a difficult question. I'm not a comedian, but on the piano, I never do some jokes, musical jokes, but I know that there are some musicians like Stefano Bolani is a master in this, doing show interaction between the audience and himself actually. But I think it's natural how he's doing this now. But I'm at all not this kind of musician. But I'm not saying that Stefano Bolani is really a great musician and a great performer. But like I said, he's natural in doing this. I don't know what's our voice. I just, from my perspective, actually, I play on the piano, but at the same time, I sing. So it comes from my body, from my. The voice is the most natural instrument for, I think, all of us, for everybody. That's why the singers are so popular. Because also the voice has their own sound. If it's good, better, worse. Barry White had the most deep voice. Yeah, but what I want to say that I'm singing, I try to connect my fingering on the keyboard with what I think, with what musically through my voice. So it's okay.
And then I guess there's a kind of philosophy that you've developed. So, or do you even?
I don't know. Maybe there is some philosophy, but I'm focused on playing music. It's nothing else. Just be in the music, be yourself, and if it works, then continue this. You need to have a passion. You need to have some idea to how to create these words, how to use some colors, how to even you struggle with your technique. When soon the coming openness and you are into this, and if you feel that people react on this on your world, then this is what's all about.
Yeah. There any other? Oh.
Thank you.
Great conversation, thanks very much. You mentioned in passing to Komeda that he was a musician who might have had a kind of European voice in some way. I wonder if you had any thoughts on that difficult question for academics about the national or regional identity of jazz, and whether, for instance, at its most bald, there might be a sense of a Polish jazz and what a Polish jazz might sound like, or on a larger scale, a European jazz and what a European jazz might sound like.
It's a complex thing to talk about what it means European jazz, what it means American jazz, because it's a mixture of history, tradition. We have to look on how the jazz starts from in America. It was, for example, how was created ballad, blues. It's a fusion of British ballad and gospel songs from black communities, which were slaves, working songs. That's how blues was found. Fusion of this British song and folk gospel song. But what the European music already was more advanced in 19th, 18th century than jazz on the beginning was. It was very simple music on the beginning, like just singing, blues, tonic, subdominant, dominant, just 3 chords. This blues form, 12 bars, and it was really simple music, but it developed. They put a lot of rhythm. African black people were transported to be as slaves. It's a tragic story. But they put a lot of rhythm, a lot of rhythmic stuff to these simple chords. And European music were much more advanced harmonically and also harmonically also as a big form of compositions, like they did Stravinsky, Shostakovich, Brahms, all this, Ravel, and some other great composers. But what I want to say, the Komeda was inspired by American jazz from 50s, 60s. At the same time he was living in Poland. Stanko used to say, what's about Polish jazz? It's a particular, I don't know, sun or whatever. This place has not much sun, but less sun. Maybe Finnish jazz is more sad because there is no sun. I don't know. But from my perspective, I don't use a lot of folk music because I was growing up listening, practice all these classical great composers and listening, be excited by American jazz, like older generation in Poland. Everybody wanted to play this rhythmic jazz, which was popular all over the world, but was created in States in the beginning of 20th century. At the same time, Komeda was inspired by them, by American, but tried to, through his music personality, he did his compositions. He gave his personality to the music. But there are more tradition in putting folk music into the jazz, like in Norway or in Sweden, which I met some musicians, and you feel that they use more folk, they tradition from that ground, from that part of the world to the music much more than me, for example, or my colleagues. So what I like in Norwegian music, that they are using this special voice, like especially horn players like Nils Petter Murvar or Matthias Young. They use special kind of blowing, playing on the horn instruments. For example, Jan Garbarek, the great saxophone player, is playing, I see immediately fjords or all the what is characteristic in looking on the world in Norway.
I think we should probably move on to the first panel session, and thankfully Marcin is going to remain for that panel session, but can we thank you for now.